Hello. There's probably like a dozen videos out there on the YouTubes that tell you what is the I Ching, but since I have this channel that I'm kind of working on right now that is about the I Ching, I thought I would go ahead and do my own words on this. The I Ching is a divination system. It's originating in China. It's about 3,000 years old. And I've been studying the I Ching in various texts, translations, commentaries from several different authors for over 10 years. And just in case you aren't familiar with what the word divination means, um, it's not just fortune telling, but that's a really popular take on the meaning of that word. And it definitely applies to how the I Ching has and can be used. It's not the only way it can be used, but if you walk a Chinatown in any major city, you're probably going to find someone who will throw the coins or um, cast staves and give you kind of a glimpse into your future, right? And the I Ching is a system that gets used in this way, but it's not the only value. There's also a lot of philosophical depth and sort of mind honing, decision making, supporting qualities that come from the depth of that philosophy of the totality of what the I Ching brings, what it represents. The structure, for example, it's all broken in solid lines, right? There's 64 hexagrams. Each of them has a grouping of 6 lines that are a combination of solid and broken. And each of those hexagram represents a fundamental force or urge of change within the world of 10,000 things. Um, each of those hexagrams contains 2 groups of 3 lines called trigrams that represent one of the 8 elements in this system: earth, air, fire, water, moon, sun, heaven, the world. And when you're doing a reading of the future, present, or past, you can ask a question about any point in time. The I Ching is, you consult it by generating a pattern of 6 solid or broken lines. And then you read the description or the commentaries related to that um, that hexagram, the main one. You'll also probably get changing lines in there, one or more. So there's line descriptions, commentaries on each of those lines. And then you, of course, that changing line transform the hexagram you receive, transforms it into a future hexagram. So you're always getting a point, kind of seeing where you are in the point of a process of transitioning from one of these urges into the other. There's also kind of a fundamental point of this that you might be asking: who is answering my question? Is it the book, just the book? Is it something more? That has many interpretations by different people who have used this over time. Carl Jung, for example, would tell you that it's your subconscious that when you ask a question, you're getting information that sort of activates pathways of looking into and questioning things that you might not have otherwise. Others may say that there's a realm of spiritual elemental guardians who can speak to us through the elements and through these hexagrams. Many folk practices in China, you're going to hear this is a means of talking with your ancestors, having a conversation with them. In the earliest stages, so how do you generate a hexagram, right? So how do you do that part? In the earliest stages, this was done by bamboo shaman who would burn an animal sacrifice or other kind of sacrifice and then read cracks in the bones after burning. And those cracks would be solid or broken, and they would generate hexagrams that way. There's also mentions of more intuitive readers who would read living nature, right? They would read the patterns of their natural surroundings. A living tortoise shell even could generate solid and broken lines. You won't have to necessarily burn it. We also have, of course, the more mathematical stave casting or yarrow stock castings and coin tosses that I could go into maybe in another video, the specific mechanics of that. I've also just, and this is a practice that I didn't invent, meditated in order to generate a hexagram. I've also meditated and received a hexagram, even though that wasn't my intention, but I got sort of the image of the hexagram and was like, maybe someone's giving me this for the situation I'm meditating on. You'll see in the I Ching that as you read these many texts, that as it has evolved over time, it's kind of a mirror of the civilization it evolved through, right? And so there's a lot of metaphors that are built around imperial China, hierarchies, ministers, kings, princes. War is a theme. And so those are all very useful and have deep spiritual meanings. They can have more practical sort of, they, mirror your day life kind of hierarchies that you're navigating, more political meanings, I guess, social meanings. And some of them, I think, can be kind of off-putting in the sense that that's a very patriarchal system. And so it's sort of my personal leaning or value to kind of really hone in through my study of these hexagrams on what are those elemental forces, how do they react and respond to each other. And I tend to lean into that for my interpretations. And that sort of helps me to feel that my interpretations are a bit more free of the misogyny and other cultural sicknesses that kind of get woven into the text over time. This is just sort of a personal preference. There's some concepts that I think are really useful as well to maybe beyond those cultural metaphors. There's some big philosophical concepts that anyone who's approaching the I Ching should probably be aware of. And the biggest one is sort of that philosophical baseline of the Tao. That's the place, the oldest philosophy that at which this system has emerged from. And the Tao is sort of like the way, path, power, this flow of the universe. Being in the Tao is being connected or in union or in harmony with the natural and transformative energy of the universe. And when you ask a question and get a hexagram, there's a lot of indicators kind of built into that text of what kinds of actions you might take that can accord with the times or be in flow with or cut off from that universal kind of flow, that Tao energy, right? Right pushing is something you'll see a lot. It's commonly used phrase that indicates moving forward with the Tao. The other concept is sort of this polarity concept. There's polarities of all sorts kind of floating around in the I Ching. And they are, the broken and solid lines, or the open and solid lines, the strong, the supple, the yin, the yang, recognizing that these represent two types of power, very different types of power. One has a very strong will, and the other is more flexible and delivered from any kind of seeking out of a particular result. And they are present. These forces are present in different mixtures throughout every single hexagram. And you'll see yang advice, for example, that will tell you to have a goal. And that's that strong yang energy. And the yin advice will be like, it's not really beneficial to have a goal right now. That's that sort of flowing with and being free from a particular outcome sort of energy. Another big concept is that of day or virtue. This is something that can be accumulated as we begin to accord with the Tao and find actions that sort of are in flow with the times. And then there's the concept of the Hung and the Po. The I Ching talks a lot about the drive of the inferior person in a situation, which sounds a lot like the ego or our primal instincts, and then integrating the self so that we're embodying the superior individual or that higher self that's connected to these heavenly virtues, the day. And those virtues are union, discipline, harmony, or justness, and truth. The process of integrating of the self with virtue is the purpose that the I Ching serves as a guide for. It has that sort of value system underlying it. The I Ching predates most and any all formal religions from China, um, but all of the religions have employed the I Ching as this moral decision making tool, right? And so you can find commentaries emerging from many philosophies. The most root philosophy that we can identify is that Taoist one. The yin and the yang lines are a construct that very much emerges from the Taoist philosophy. And the image descriptions sort of depict every change as this sort of natural phenomena composed of elements, and the elemental system and the line system are all emerging from that Taoism. And then we have the Confucian commentaries, which came in as the line descriptions that come along with every single hexagram. Those emerge more from the imperial side of things. When you ask the I Ching a question and you get a changing line, you can read, the line for that one particular, the commentaries for that one particular line. And sometimes it will feel a little like contradictory to the main text because those lines are showing a progression of that change. And that change may feel really different depending on where it is in its process of doing its thing, right? And so, also, those lines can represent hierarchies within the system. So at 5, you're the king. At 6, you're a sage, or maybe you've fallen into madness. And at line 1, you're really just like everyday Joe. And later on, we see that Japanese Buddhism has picked up the I Ching, right? And they include it in part of samurai training in a text called The Warrior Way. And this philosophy kind of strongly urges against using this as a fortune-telling book, but much more focused on that mind training aspect. You'll also even find translations that come from Christian perspectives and others throughout as we've entered into modern times, and people continue finding this useful, right? And so that's kind of what I have on what is the I Ching, and I hope it's helpful to you.